Okay, there we are. Andre Lopez-Turner, welcome to the listening. So, where is this beautiful pink armchair situated in the world that's just behind you?
Yeah, great. Thank you.
Yeah, where are you?
Um, I'm in North London, and depending on how this postcode snobbery or thing that happens in London, I'm either in Hampstead, Kentish Town, um, Gospel Oak. Oh, no, sorry, and Camden.
Okay, so
Yeah.
what? Those are different options
So
you can use as
I,
and
I
when.
kind of claim them all. Mm, yeah, or who you're talking to. You know how it is over here,
Yeah, yeah.
with sort of class and postcodes and things like that. So I think technically I'm in Hampstead, but it's up for debate apparently.
And which one of those do you prefer? Which is the closest aligned to what you sort of where you see yourself?
Mm, well, it's a good and tough question. To be honest, without evading it, I'd say all of them. It's a bit like, I have my preferences and alignments, maybe like politics, like all parties actually have some good stuff and some bad stuff in my worldview. But if I had to have a choice, it would be Hampstead now. But 5 or 10 years ago, it might have been Camden. Yeah, that's how I'd answer that.
Cool. And
Yeah.
are you near the Heath then? Are you within sort of walking distance of Hampstead Heath?
Yeah, we're about 5 minutes,
Mm,
5 minute strong walk towards the Heath. Yeah, so close, which is a treasure.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. How
yeah.
long have you been there then, living in that place?
Um, 12 years.
Okay, so a
Yeah,
good
and
amount of time.
before that, I was in Ladbroke Grove. Um, yeah, Ladbroke Grove, Queensway, you know, around there. But
So
I'm a New
so
Zealander by
yeah, yeah.
I came
Well,
here
that's
came here
kind of
20 years ago. So mm.
so. Was that the first part of your life you were in New Zealand, and then you moved? Did you come to London? Was that your first time getting away from home, or
Mm,
I mean,
no,
in terms
because
of living somewhere?
no, because I was a student, and then I lived away from home in New Zealand. I come from a place called Dunedin, and then I lived in Auckland. So no, 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 not like that. We fly the nest pretty quick in
Right.
New Zealand, in my generation anyway. So no, 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 no.
And what brought you to London then? Had you were you sort of traveling the world, sort of seeing a bit of everything, and then you got here, or was this a sort of target, a place that you wanted to be? What brought you to London then?
Mm. Um, well, in New Zealand, we had this thing called the OE, or the Overseas Experience, that we grew up with. And the idea was that you finished school, worked, went to university, and left the country and came to Europe to, see the world, see your, ancestors to a point, particularly if you're of a Pākehā or European extraction. Um, and then you'd go back. So I kind of followed that path. Um, and I don't like to follow. So I went to Indonesia and Southeast Asia for about 6 or 9 months before I came here in '98, I think. So yeah, that was the kind of thing. And then the idea is that you spend 2 years here and you go home. And a lot of my generation, we didn't go home. We were called Generation Brain Drain. Um, I didn't go home because I was angry at the country and the way it had lurched into a sort of neoliberal capitalism, privatization takeover, which was started by the left, actually, the Labour government. And I wanted to see the world. I love people in different cultures and different places and stuff. So I stayed. And I go back every 2 or 3 years, and it's kind of how it's been on one level. Yeah, but I didn't feel like I fitted into this generation brain drain that was thrown around in New Zealand in the early 2000s, I think, because it was coming from the right, and the Kiwis who were espousing this were what I will call the corporate banking financial class of people here and there. And they wanted more of the reforms, more of them, more trade liberalization, more privatization, more NGOs and other things running like private businesses, student loans. We had that in 91, 92, I think, my first year at university. And they wanted more of that. And I thought and know that that's the reason why a lot of people leave. So, yeah. I'm giving you a little bit of a political answer off the bat, but that's how I was. That's how I am. And in between, I did a lot of traveling. Got married, got divorced, got remarried, did a whole bunch of different jobs. And I'm still here, but I don't have the anti-attitude or the angry attitude that I used to have because of the change in government in New Zealand. And I'm older, but wiser. I see things slightly differently, not too differently politically like that, but I see all the wonderful things that we have. Yeah. So that was kind of it. So that's how I ended up in London. And I like London, love London and England. It's interesting. And I was thinking the other day, after 22 years off and on, sometimes I still think I'm still learning and integrating. And I speak the language. I speak another language. I speak Spanish too, but not great, but pretty good. So yeah.
Have you got Spanish blood? Have you got Spanish blood in the family then?
On my mother's side, but I was married to a lady from the Basque Country, so we joined our names. But on my mother's side, she says that, but she can't sort of find that route for various reasons. She also thinks we've got a bit of French, a little bit of Maori, other things. My mother's very beautiful and very exotic, and how would I put it? Extravagant. So she would make those kind of claims, but she hasn't really been able to totally prove them. But
what's your feeling? What's your gut feeling?
Another story.
What's your gut feeling knowing yourself? Do you think you've got some of that more kind of European blood, that sort of more South European blood?
Yeah, well, I do know I've got a MacLeod clan root. So there's a Scottish side that I do know, mainly through my father. And I believe my mother on lots of those levels because she's kind of quite olive. And she comes from a place which had a French colonial root called Aotearoa in New Zealand, a French colonial Māori town. But what do I feel? I kind of feel all of them. I feel all of them. I think I can identify with all of those things. And whilst it sounds really cliche and trite and a little bit, I do feel like I'm, a person of the world, which is probably partly the reason why I did and have done so much traveling. And maybe it is in our genes as New Zealanders, because we're called Aotearoa New Zealand, which is the Māori name for New Zealand, means the land of the long white cloud. And we were all immigrants. Even the Maori culture, it was some say it was the Moriori before the Maori, and then some other people say it was a tribe called the Waitaha from Easter Island. So a lot of the, who
Okay.
knows, but we're all kind of immigrants and travelers, as I understand.
Yeah, I guess, and if you go far enough back, everybody is, right. I always think that about Britain itself. The and even in relatively recent history, there's wave after wave of people arriving, and not that long ago in kind of geological terms, when the ice age was happening, there was nobody here, so everybody arrived after the ice retreated, and that wasn't that long ago actually, in human history. So yeah, there's it's in us all, really, I think.
Mm, mm,
um, that's my feeling anyway, and
mm,
identifying strongly with something usually has some kind of defensive root to it, I feel, or a kind of, there's a fear in there somewhere. um, you can have a strong attachment association with a place, obviously, but I think when it's fought over or it's kind of defended in such a strong way, it's usually because there's some threat or feeling or feeling of a threat or a fear of some sort. So, because
mm,
I guess I feel a bit like you, even though I'm very much rooted in the place where I live here in Norfolk. I
mm,
I do feel like I'm just of the world in that way you say. I really do.
mm.
And I think you can be both. You can be very much rooted to a place, but feel connected to the whole. Yeah, I
Yeah,
certainly.
yeah, no, totally. I mean, you know, I think we both know that, and there's nothing wrong with being attached to a place and having a strong identity to it. That's good. That's really healthy, and there's nothing wrong about that. But I guess I've always liked the other. Um, I like the other. I like the other skin color, the other. I'm not religious, but the other religious beliefs are interesting. Yeah, I'm curious. And I don't see the other as a threat, but I think human beings, we are quite tribal. I mean, I come from a tribal country, which was colonized, and it doesn't matter if we're in Africa or Indonesia or in Norfolk or here. There's tribalism here with the postcode. you know, yeah, and sadly we have gang warfares and street violence and the youth at the moment here over postcodes. I mean, yeah, it's ridiculous, but that seems to be how we are, or a lot of people are. As human beings. And I also get the reason why people want to claim a place and have their traditions and cultures and customs. Like I actually do, I probably identify with that more than anything else. How would I put this? I want to go to Indonesia, and we're very privileged. I'm very privileged in the sense, and see Indonesia. I don't want to rock up like I did not too long ago and see a place called Kuta, which I saw 26 years ago, and it's Nike, um,
Mm-hmm.
all the multinational corporations and stuff. Yeah. Yes, it's Indonesia. It really is, and it's Bali and Kuta on some levels. But so I understand the kickback, whether it's in England, France, Germany, Tanzania, and we're in an interesting time at the moment where some of these things can get quite fiercely debated. You
Yeah,
know,
I think, yeah, because there's a sense of threat, or because the world is perceived as more dangerous. people retreat into that kind of tribalism, don't they? As a kind of security blanket or something. It's like a natural reaction to a
Mm,
sense of insecurity. Is hold on to something that you
mm,
perceive as being solid. Um,
mm,
so it does, and I feel like for me and perhaps for you too, the reason I can feel like I'm just a person of the world is because I have a certain sense of security within myself wherever I am that's independent of place, that's been earned, I guess, through the kind of journey I've been on.
mm,
So, and not everybody's on that journey at the same pace or have consciously chosen to go on that journey. So, there's all these different places people are coming from.
mm.
Um,
Yeah.
and it's perspectives, isn't it? Once you've seen other ways of living, other sides of life, other places, or even you've kind of, even if you haven't traveled so much and you've just kind of read into or spoken to or conversed with different people from different cultures, you start to realize that there's a lot more going on than what you thought was going on and what you grew up with, and that the world has many different ways of being. And as
Mm,
soon as, certainly for me, as soon as I realized that, I couldn't be certain or kind of wave a flag about anything that I'd inherited culturally, or because I could see that it was just a story amongst many stories and it had as much validity as anything else. And and that kind of opened my eyes, I guess, and made me more flexible and more tolerant and more interested as well in
mm,
all these other cultures, and also in the similarities, because there are common themes throughout the world, throughout time, in fact, throughout the mythologies or the religions. They all have those echoes, those common threads, the kind of archetypal undercurrent that seems to feed them all.
mm. Yeah.
So yeah. mm. And
Yeah.
I wonder, so do you feel like London is home now? Does it feel like, do you have a kind of, do you even need or have a sense of home, or are you kind of always ready to just to move to the next place, or is home kind of in you rather than where you live?
Yeah. I love that. Yeah, I like what you just said. Home is in me. Um, yeah, and again, that's a bit of it can sound a little bit cliche and trite sometimes, can't it? The home is in, but yes, home is in me. Uh, I mean, I, it's another tricky one, really. I think in the last year and a half, Tim, under the lockdown here, I felt the first time I felt a little bit of there's been a slight sort of scare about the closing down of everything and not being able to get anywhere or get back to where you're from came into me
Mm,
in the last year and a half, more than ever had. And I think that's probably, a lot of people have that and have had that. So, um, and yeah, when you see borders close, airports close, and in New Zealand, we've got a 2 week quarantine where they put you in a hotel for 2 weeks, and they shepherd you in there. It's very strict. It's kind of like a Chinese authoritarian kind of thing. I felt a little bit sort of, oh my gosh, if things, and I had to cool myself down slightly because yeah, as you know, over here, there's been a lot going on in the last 5 or 10 years with austerity, Brexit, sort of a rise of nationalism in Europe, because I think nationalism and patriotism are very different things. So I did sort of, or do sort of, that's become more of a tangled web for me. I've got, one parent particular who's sort of not as well, as he used to be, and he's kind of my soul man, my father. He's an amazing poet and writer, and I did feel slightly and still a little bit trapped.
Mm.
Yeah. And the 2-week quarantine thing that's going on in New Zealand. So so I would say, I think, look, answer your question, I think home isn't me. Home is where I come from. I get that, but I feel this is home as well. I had quite a strong connection to the Spanish Basque Country for a wee while. That was kind of taken away from me and severed. But I've always felt it'd be nice to have many homes. If you had the means and the wealth, where some people do, where they have many homes in different parts of the world, for whatever reasons they have them. Yeah, but that would be how I'd answer that.
Mm.
Mm.
Do you?
How about you? How about you?
Yeah, well, I do feel I have a very strong relationship with the land here where I live,
Mm.
which has been developing for about 18 years now. And it's strong and it's deep. And it's kind of a love affair, really. I've sort of been growing more deeply in love with this place
Mm.
and feeling that coming back to me as well. So, in that sense, it does feel like home. And yet, there is that thing in me that knows that that true sense of home is within me. And if for whatever reason, like if there was some kind of sudden necessity to move, I could adapt to that and it wouldn't kill me. It wouldn't.
Mm.
I'd be ready to do that, I think, um, which is interesting. So there's no sense of. It's a kind of paradox, I guess, because I can feel this real sense of rootedness and connection to place and belonging, and yet there is this facility to move if necessary. And maybe that is a very human story. Maybe that's the kind of human history, isn't it? Is that things happened, you know, and suddenly you had to move, and that's what we did, and we were really good at that, and we were good at adapting to changes and pressures, and that's kind of how we spread around the world in a way.
Yeah,
Um,
so
so
true.
yeah, it's.
True.
But I feel like there's something else in that. It's now that I've developed and really been taught by the land itself how to relate in a real way to place, I feel like that's a skill or a kind of knowledge or an opening that once it's happened doesn't go away. So wherever I went in the world, I think I'd quite quickly reconnect with the land. I mean, that would almost be it would be my priority even before connecting with a culture somewhere, would be
Mm.
actually connecting with the physical living land and the plants and the animals and
Mm.
getting that relationship intact, because I recognize that that's the most important thing.
Yeah.
And that's probably the thing I've learned from this time here. That's probably the biggest lesson is relationship, good and right relationship with place is the foundation for any kind of well-being or good way of life or community or culture, actually. And
Mm.
perhaps all cultures that have lasted for any amount of time had their roots in that way,
Mm.
in place. And
Yeah.
yeah.
No, it's powerful. I mean, I think as a New Zealander, we consciously and unconsciously have a very powerful attachment to the land because we have such beautiful landscapes. And I always say no one's got a mortgage on beauty, because the world is a very beautiful place, and it really is. However, I think, well, me for certainly, and for a lot of people, we don't feel intimidated by nature. And some of us have a more of a amazement at nature. I mean, I really do. I mean, you say Like I live next to, I'm very lucky to live next to Hampstead Heath, and I swim in the Hampstead Heath ponds every morning. And, I mean, it's a communion with really deep, beautiful nature. My dad's a landscape environmentalist poet. And our culture is really rooted in that, particularly Indigenous culture. The Maori people, which some say were something called the Waitaha, they came from Easter Island or Hawaii, and so that is in there. And I think if I had to, we can adapt because that's what we do. But there are some places like high rises, skyscrapers, deep cities, and that, and I'm sure people love them, and that's what they know. But that would be very tough for me. I remember going to my first and only ever time in New York, and I was in this place, and the New Yorkers were they were going on and on about how this New York was the center of everything, and it was the wonderful place, and it was the best city ever, and stuff. And I actually felt like a real Londoner because I turned around, and it was a long evening, and I just said to this guy, "Can you just drop talking about New York now?" And I knew he didn't know anything about New Zealand or South Pacific. He wasn't there. And I said, "I'm a Londoner." And I said, quite frankly, this is London's a green city. You've got one park here, and it's amazing. And we don't need to keep parroting on about it. You're kind of boring me a bit. Well, I mean, the guy, he almost threatened violence against me for a while. It's like, but you just need to chill out, I was like, because it's concrete jungle. Yes, there's other Southeast Asian cities, etc. But personally, those cities I actually find them more interesting. But yeah, that strong attachment to the land and nature, and just the never-ending moods and colors and sounds, and you've got to keep looking. You've got to keep looking because it just changes every second. So yeah, I mean, I've been to Norfolk. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
Nice part of
As you
England.
say, it's constantly shifting, and the seasons change, but every year is different. And every day I'm seeing something I've never seen before, or having an experience in that way. And the more you look and the more you get attached, the deeper you get into kind of conversation with it in that way, the more gets revealed. And you realize, well, I'll never know this place. It's always going to have something more for me. And the beauty, there are layers and layers to the beauty, and they're more and more subtle, but it's endless, it seems. It's like there's always something that you can that can be found. And it's so, that kind of relationship is so nourishing on so many levels. And this is what I've come to know now, is that it really does give us everything we need, but it's kind of subtle, and the man-made. And you talk about New York, there's something so brutal and overwhelming about places like that, that all those subtle senses that you kind of drop into when you're in a very beautiful natural place just have to shut down so you can survive. And you're in a very different kind of state when you're in New York. I mean, you're heightened perceptively, but it's kind of fight or flight. It's not heightened and sensitized and subtle because you're totally relaxed and connected and held. It is like, okay, I'm surviving in this situation. I know that can be exciting and kind of creative and all those things, as we know, especially when we're younger, we kind of want a bit of that, don't we? But ultimately, it's not a healthy way to be. And this is because I lived in London for 10 years and I grew up in Manchester, so I know cities and I know that kind of environment. But I now realize, having lived in a very rural place, a very beautiful place, just how much more supportive and healthy it is to be in that kind of world. And as you say, one of the great things about London, one of the things I love dearly about London, is how many trees and green spaces there actually are. London is full of trees and full of fascinating trees from all over the world. You know, even just in the streets, there's all kinds of things living there. And that has a profound effect on the overall feeling of the place.
Yeah.
And you know, Hampstead Heath is such an oasis as well. You get up there because you're elevated, you're kind of above, you're above it a little bit up there, aren't you? And it's big enough that you can really feel the land again. You know, you can feel the land there. It's a very, and it's, you know, it's heavily managed, but it does have a sort of, the wildness to some extent is intact there. You know, there are places, aren't there, where it's still there, which is
Yeah.
incredible. You know,
Yes. Yes.
and
Yeah.
and fascinating. I mean, tell us more. I want to know more about the swimming in the ponds, because what an amazing experience. Just, you know, immersion in water, but going down there in the morning, what a way to start your day. I want to hear more about how that is for you, you know, how you experience that. Give us a taste of what it's like.
Yeah. Well, cool. I mean, well, I think, where do you start really? I mean, you're in nature. You're in, water. 70% of us is made of water. So, that's important. There's a community there of men and women who swim all year round. In the depths of winter, we can break the ice, go in the snow. Um, for me, is on the health front, I think it's just a revelation, because you get into freezing cold water and you get the shock response, which is the autoimmune system, fight and flight, system. Yeah, and we're told that we can't control this, and it's unconscious, and kind of we can, through mentality, breath, and conditioning. And the sensation that you get just being in water, but in very cold water. I mean, the neurochemical hit, norepinephrine, which is an antidepressant, and serotonin, dopamine, noradrenaline, these kind of things coming. So you get, there's so much to it, and there's a lot of, I alternate between them. So I go to the mixed and the men's, and once a year or twice a year, we sort of get invited to the women's. And I've kind of got an actual group called the Water Rats, which there might be a film coming out on us and this sort of soon. So it's kind of interesting. That's another kind of community, which is exciting. So, you get this kind of, trepidation, when you're new to it, of getting into something which is a hostile environment, freezing cold water. And not for you or me, some people, it's the environment. And, you're overcoming that mental shift to, get into something which, can kill you. And then you learn to work with it, control it, etc. Then you get this massive euphoria afterwards. And then you get, what I call lovely nutcases. We've got dudes from the House of Lords to all sorts of diverse people in there. And I think when the lifeguard says it's a great leveler. And then we've got a political fight on our hand at the moment about the City of London Corporation and how they've, in my opinion and many others, contravened the 1871 Hampstead Heath Public Land Act and are charging for this.
Right.
I've done a few, I'm like you, I do a podcast on other things. So we got that, but, and the weird thing, Tim, which will make you laugh was, I used to work in addiction. And one of the common lines in addiction is, if you'd ever told me I'll be sitting in this room, smoking 5 grams of crack and then coming down with 3 grams of heroin, I would have said you're a nutcase. All right. It's one of the things that happens in addiction. And so if you'd ever told me 4 years ago that I'd be getting up with great passion, enthusiasm, and excitement in the dark to get into freezing cold water, I would have said you're a nutcase too. Although, I do breath work and I teach breath work and I blah, 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 all these kind of things. So, but the bigger deal is that sense of community again. And it sounds a little bit cliche and trite, but I remember I think it was September. I'd done my back in about 4 years ago. I could hardly walk, and I was going along there. It was the only thing I could do. And a really old guy, close to his 80s, just looked at me. It was about October, and just sort of said, "I think you've got it in your eye. Are you joining us for the winter? It looks like it's becoming a healthy addiction for you." And I was going, well, I like a challenge, I thought. And I thought, yeah, man. And there you go. And, I don't know how many people do it in the winter. I wouldn't know, but, you see the same faces.
Mm-hmm.
Someone says, "Hey, Andre, have you seen that guy, Tim?" And you think, did he? I didn't even know that they knew each other first term. He hasn't been here for a few days. Literally, they say that to you.
Right.
And I go, "Oh, yeah, do I know him? He's up in Norfolk for the week, but he
Yeah.
said
Yeah. Okay.
he'd be back next Tuesday." And
Mm-hmm.
they go, "Oh, cool."
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and you don't get that very often, do you?
Well, there's something wonderful. Again, you've brought up another thing about London, which I love, which is it does have lots of um, versions of that where people from all walks of life come together. I mean, primarily it happens geographically in that all the areas of London, or they certainly used to be, I don't know it as well as I did, but they always mixed people up. You would always have like a council estate in, on the edge of Belgravia, or, so you've got different kinds of people living next door to each other and
Yeah.
mixing inevitably, in the shops, or just so that kind of. I hope they never lose that in London, because that's one of the things that makes it a great city, is that everybody's kind of overlapping. And there are also these kind of institutions like you're describing with the swimming, where people come together with a
Mm.
shared interest, but they're from all walks of life. And that's such a healthy. If you think about the immune system of the city, of the culture of the city,
Mm.
that's one of the key things that keeps it healthy, is this mixing. It's the exchange, it's the different viruses and bacterias of people and their cultures, their personal cultures,
Yeah.
mixing, exchanging, and all the kind of knock on effects of that, all the opportunities that arise, all the relationships that begin.
Mm-hmm.
Those are really fertile places. Those are the kind of the edges where things are born. So it's so wonderful to hear, that particular version of it. And it's kind of nice that in a metaphorical way, people are also doing the same to their bodies when they're going swimming, there. So I like that a lot.
Mm.
Um, it's
Yes.
such a beautiful thing. It's like a secret as well. It's like the people who've discovered the secret of getting into cold water every morning and knowing that they're being reborn every day, and it's almost as if you've got a new body every day, because it does have that effect, doesn't it? It has that kind of regenerative effect, that kind of clearing away of the dead material, of the kind of,
Mm.
possibly, I mean, you can never make these claims, but sort of anything like cancer cells, or, think toxins, things that are kind of starting to accumulate, they just get cleaned out. As you're saying, we get access to this part of ourselves that until recently we thought was just autonomous completely and not under our control, but it
Mm.
seems it actually could be, which is incredible.
Oh, it is. I mean, you talk about the immune system. I think I've had one cold in the last 4 years, and I was known as the guy that would get 5 or 6 colds a year, and bad ones. There's older guys in there and women in their 80s. Their arthritis is greatly reduced, and some of them's gone away. So, yeah, yeah, and I mean, we become slightly boring
Yeah,
even.
yeah, of course.
I mean, I've been up in Norfolk.
Yeah.
Was it 6 months ago? And that was one of the conditions. We had to find a river. We had to be close by this river. I mean, are you a partaker yourself?
Well, I do.
I can see it written all over your face.
Yeah, so I'm living on the edge of some woodland, and I'm surrounded. The building that I'm in, which I'm slowly turning into a home over 20 years, is surrounded by these really tall pine trees, beautiful big Corsican pines,
Mm.
and I've made a shower underneath them outside where I do my cold shower every morning,
Awesome.
right through the year, as you're saying. But
Brilliant.
also, 10 miles away is the North Norfolk coast, so we've got the sea, and
Mm.
there are various places on the river here where people do a bit of wild swimming. So all those options are there. I mean, I tend to swim in the sea more than the river just because of what they put on the land, in terms of pesticides, weed killers. It upsets me because the rivers are so beautiful, but at certain times of the year when they're spraying or all that stuff is ending up in the river, and I feel,
Mm.
and it kind of, and now that I know that, it's kind of spoils it for me a little bit because when I'm getting in the water, I think, what am I getting into here?
Mm.
And obviously, all of that ends up in the sea, but the sea's a much bigger, more diluting thing. So I tend to swim more in the sea in the summer. I haven't yet got into doing it in the winter, but that may come.
Mm.
But my really for me at the moment, it's just every morning. That's how I start my day. Well, I wake, I do my breathing. It's very much the kind of Wim Hof thing. I do
Mhm.
my breathing as soon as I wake up in bed, and then I go and have my cold shower, and that is my morning ritual, and it's
Breathing.
fantastic. And just like you, I
Mm.
used to get colds all the time, because life is stressful, even out here,
Mm.
and hardly anything at all in the last couple of years. I've been doing it every day.
Mm.
And if something appears, if I start to feel it in my body, it doesn't last. It doesn't get a hold. It doesn't get a hold.
Yeah.
And I'm convinced that's what's doing it.
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's more medical literature coming out all the time. I swim with a doctor who, says when he's actually feeling a bit rough, he double and triple dips, which, we do sometimes. And yeah, I know, yeah, I hear you about, the pesticides and stuff in the land. I mean, it's a massive issue in New Zealand and around there. Yeah, but good. I mean, the shower, you just got to do whatever it takes, and that's what ends up happening. I mean, if I'm away from it, I do cold showers actually as well. I sort of have a hot one at the start and then go to the cold. Um, yeah, you end up, it becomes a healthy, positive addiction.
Yeah.
Yeah, and your sea up there is great. I mean, I love the sea. I'd love to be in the sea daily. I mean, I used to live by a beach 20 odd years ago. And I hear that. And you have up there in Norfolk, you have crazy tides,
Oh yeah, yeah,
quite strong undercurrents too.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's
Oh,
it's
it
quite.
gets you.
It
It's
looks kind of quite innocent, when you sort of see it, but
mm,
um, yeah, we have some big, strong tides and currents. And on those spring tides, the water moves quickly. I've got a boat out in Blakeney Harbour, or like a houseboat that we use just as a caravan, as a place to go and stay because it's so beautiful out there. And when
mm,
and it dries out every day, tide goes out, it's on the sand, and then the tide comes in. But when that tide comes in on the spring tide, it flies in. It's
mm,
really powerful. Um, yeah, and I reckon people who are sailing and stuff like that. If you can sail there with all the little creeks and inlets and challenging terrain and the current and the weather, if you can
mm,
sail there, you can sail anywhere in the world. It's
mm.
an incredible place.
Yeah, yeah, it is. It's remarkable, isn't it? That kind of tidal shift.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
I'm always amazed at just the quantity of water. I can't get my head around it. You fill up your bath and you think, wow, that's a lot of water. And then
Mm,
you see the tide come in and you think, how much water is moving all the time? It's insane. It's incredible how quick it comes in, really.
yeah,
But
huge.
yeah, yeah, that thing of
You.
sort of going in 2 3 times if you're feeling ill, that's kind of counterintuitive because I grew up thinking you were sort of told, oh, don't get cold, or if you're feeling a bit unwell, it's like wrap up warm. But I found the same thing. If I start to feel I'm having a cold or something, just go and have the shower. Really, it just kicks your immune system into action. That's what it seems like. It just boosts it. It's like a hit for it.
100%.
It's so exciting how many people are getting into this, because it does seem to be a real growing movement, globally. Just people I'm hearing and seeing it a lot now. People wanting wild swimming or swimming in the sea all year round. There was a group of women who started dipping here, people that I know, and they kind of came together over the lockdown as a group and sort of went out every morning and got in the sea all year round. They were doing it, and it's, if you want to keep yourself safe and protected from a global pandemic, it's probably one of the best things you could do, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean,
let's not get into that.
I swam all, look, I'm a rule breaker on these fronts. My group, the Water Rats, we swam all through the lockdown. Can't disclose too much because things are coming out, but and I'm a breath worker myself. You get we know this stuff, but yes, I mean, it's brilliant. I mean, when Wim Hof started all of this, it's a fascinating books, and it's, as it's becoming more common. I think there's a group of doctors in the southwest around Cornwall actually want to prescribe this,
Right.
the social prescribing. I mean, I'm married to a doctor who fully supports it and sort of edging into it. We have a doctor in our, renegade swimming group who, I don't want to say too much about him because, well, he had to be careful, but he was like, this is the bomb. And him and I and a few others, because of our backgrounds, know the physiology of this. And that was part of the attraction when I actually discovered the Wim Hof thing, which is probably about 5 years ago. And that just came through the surfing community. But yeah, that's great that you're doing that too. It's great. Yeah.
And cool. It's exactly the kind of thing that if authority and government were actually serving the people, these are the kinds of things that should have been being broadcast, right? Like, do this, everybody do this, get outside, get some sunlight on your skin, get in the cold water. This is how you protect yourself, not staying at home inside in fear on your computer. That's gonna fuck your immune system up, right? So yeah. It's so funny that the things that are actually healthy, I mean, funny to me, but I have a dark sense of humor. Just funny that the very things that would have helped us through this period were somehow seen as wrong. Like, you couldn't go. They stopped people going to kind of national parks and things, which to me was bizarre. It was like, well, that's where people should be.
Yeah.
You're not going to catch anything out there if you're hiking around, in the Peak Districts. Just not going to happen because you're in nature, you're physical, it couldn't be more healthy.
Yeah.
It's very interesting.
Well, it is. And sorry.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, no, it's as you say, and look, if anyone's interested, as you say, cold showers are fabulous. If you live in New York or Hong Kong or wherever in a densely populated area, cold baths, and it's a euphoria afterwards. But yeah, I remember that about possibly, I think where you are living or up north, people were getting apprehended for being in parks and quite strong nature, not just parks. I can remember reading about that. And I was apprehended a few times by various authorities in the law, and it was bizarre experience because it was like, and treated nicely actually, because I'm like, fella, it's 4:45 in the morning. So I'm not putting my finger up to you, an authority or anyone else, okay? And me and a few others are here, and we can debate this all long, but look, we're not doing this at 12 o'clock in the middle of a day. It's not a sort of a stance. And funnily enough, one guy was he got interested. He didn't join us, but he didn't prosecute us. And yeah, but I thought that was I thought that was pretty awful, actually. I think it was in Yorkshire, wasn't it? Or maybe up north in these parts where people were getting harassed.
Yeah, I think there were like drones going around, like taking pictures of people walking up in the hills. You're pretty weird.
Yeah, now here, we have a strong movement against the City of London Corporation because they're trying to charge people for accessing these ponds. And there are a lot of ponds on Hampstead Heath, not just
the traditional. Are they the landowners then? Have they always owned the land there?
No. They manage it, and I cannot quite remember when they took it over. And I've done a couple of quite big podcasts on this, but I can't remember when. But they've taken it over, and they were sort of bequeathed this, but it's public land. It's for all of us. It's called public access, and the City of London Corporation are charging people to swim in in these ponds, and we've recently found out that they get £10 million a year called a city offset to run this. So yes, and there's well, we've said it. It's been written in a local paper. We did a podcast on it, and hopefully someone else might take this up because, this is what we're talking about. In my opinion, no one owns the land. The land owns us. And, us humans, we've colonized it, bought it, divided it up. We've done all of these things. But really, it does not, we don't own it. And again, it's not, it's not a trite cliche here. As you know, and I know, and lots of other people know, throw us into the ocean. Yeah. And no matter how powerful and wonderful we are, the ocean is going to pick us up and literally give us a hiding, if not kill us, take us to a mountain, a forest, etc. As much as our wonderful humanity, our incredible technological advances, all these wonderful things that we do, we can't control like this, this hegemony over nature. So it does irk me and quite a lot of others that this is happening in Hampstead Heath Ponds. But actually, as a New Zealander, my father has an organization called Public Access New Zealand that I always knew about, but I never took that seriously until actually this has happened. It's ridiculous. And nature heals us. It revives us. It gives us so many things. And as we know, we are destroying it, all of us, in different ways of being. But to have to pay to access a pond, it's just wrong.
There's a shift going on, isn't there? Because that has been the way for a long time. That whole relationship to nature and the land. It's been all about conquest and dominance and control. And I really feel strongly that there is a change in the tide now, and who knows how long it will take to gather enough momentum to truly have an effect that we see culturally. But we are moving, I feel, back towards that kind of relationship that you're describing. That sort of, or that you're describing the opposite of, where we're not owning it, we're in relationship with it, we're honoring it in a way, and we're kind of, we're loving it, and we're relating to it in a deep and meaningful way. And that's how the relationship wants to be. This idea of ownership is really about distance, and it's an abstraction. The more you feel like you own a place, the less you are actually connected to what it really is. The more it's kind of an idea, or it's a piece of text in a document, in a legal document. And the more you have a relationship with place and you're part of it and you're woven into it, the less ownership means anything at all. And the more absurd it seems in actual fact, because you realize, how can I possibly own this thing? It's alive. You know, if anything, it owns me.
Mm.
So yeah, I feel like that's a kind of, there is a change, a deep change in the current, you know, in our countries, in our kind of technological Western countries,
Mm.
that the strong, deep current of that relationship is starting to rise up again and be felt nearer the surface.
Mm.
Just, I guess, just the fact that I've lived the life I've lived for the last 20 years is an illustration of that. Is because I feel like I'm almost, um, I've been on a kind of indigenization program without knowing it. Like I'm being shown what that relationship might be again with place. And
Mm.
perhaps my children who were born here, who probably know it much better than I ever will because they were babies in it, in the landscape, and had that intimacy that only children can have. You know, maybe as they grow, if they stay or return here after going away, they will perhaps have an even deeper, stronger relationship with the place. And,
Mm.
you know, it's kind of like, I feel like it's just remembering that deep indigenous part of us all, you know, and all that is relationship with the land and a community that is completely enmeshed within the landscape where they live and has all its kind of points of reference woven into the land.
Mm.
And and the heartening thing is that I don't think we've lost that. You know, it may seem like, oh, we're that kind of relationship is gone and it's dying out in the world. I think it's always there in the soil, just waiting. And
Mm.
it's so, once you go towards it, because it's nature, because it's life, and it's so virile and powerful and strong, as soon as you plug into that, it just erupts and blooms. And you know, if you do that as a community, it's so strong because you're getting aligned with what, you know, with the natural law, I suppose. you're
Mm.
you're just you're just connecting into what was always there and you've always been a part of. And if anything, our way of living and being so abstracted and in our heads is so difficult. It's so difficult to stay disconnected. It takes a lot of energy to maintain the distance that we have culturally. And I think inevitably we can't sustain that kind of insane separation because it's actually starting to kill us now because we've been poisoning the land and destroying habitat. And now finally sort of realizing, oh fuck, we absolutely depend on this because we're a part of it. We can live in our heads to a certain extent, but our bodies can't live in our heads, you know.
Mm.
And at the
Yeah.
moment, so far, we still need our bodies to, you know, maybe if we get beyond that, you know, maybe if we solve that problem of biology and we do upload ourselves, that won't be an issue. But until then,
Yeah. Well, you know, the lockdown saw a massive in London use of wonderful parks here, all of them. And, you know, as like you said, everyone gravitated to them. That's what people did. And I know all the parks in London got this and they got heavy traffic. And Hampstead was, we'd go out there and, oh man, there was so many people on the heath. It was incredible. And, you know, you could see the destruction we all caused just by walking on the grass and doing other things. And just getting back to the City of London Corporation, a little bit of politicking on my behalf, but at the same time, the committees who are responsible for this commodification and charging for swimming in the ponds spent something like £315,000 in 4 to 6 months on wining and dining in their private members clubs. And this was exposed in a paper called the Camden New Journal. And at the same time, they reduced the maintenance cost of running the heath in that period where it was, I read the letters to the editor of a local newspaper, which is a fabulous newspaper, the Camden New Journal. And, people were saying, a lot of people were actually giving that human thing. God, there's too many people on the heath. They're coming from here, there, and everywhere. And they've got an issue in Primrose Hill at the moment with the young people partying on the heath. And, that tendency to sort of not want to share it, or, but also concerned it's real. I mean, it was getting really degraded. But again, it showed you what you just said about that connection or movement towards nature. And I thought in the London Mayoralty recently, Sian Berry, the co-leader of the Green Party, got third. And she, I mean, so, I think, yes, it's happening. I just wanted to say, because you probably know this more than me or something, but I think 93% of the land here in this country is kind of privatized. I read that once in the FT, so shut off to that, what you call rambling, I love that, rambling, Well, Americans hike. I think we tramp in New Zealand. The English ramble. That's pretty cool. These different words for things. But, Tim, that's very significant. And people might listen to this and think, oh, look at those green hippie sort of, dudes rambling on. Pardon the pun, but it's real, and it's serious, because people, as we can see, can shut down public access. And that has been highlighted by the lockdown and those examples you gave, and some of the examples, which is what's been going on here. And people always say, oh, you're an extremist, or this is madness. Yeah, it's not. People were warning against Hitler. It happened. Cambodians were saying, God, look out for this guy Pol Pot. People go, oh yeah, but hey man, come on.
No, it's so true. And a lot of this land, the right to access it was hard won not that long ago, like in the 60s. I think there was a big movement, especially in the north of England, on the Pennines, to get access to grouse moors, and so that people could walk these huge areas of land that were owned by private individuals or families, and used for shooting or sort of country sports and things. And there was a real kind of hard-won movement that got access to those places, and it has to be defended and kept, an eye has to be kept on it, because the forces of kind of ownership and commercialization are always trying to scrape back a bit, or grab a bit, or take a bit, or close off a pathway, or and it's really, really important to ideally we do want a lot more access and a lot more space for people to be, because I feel like if you stop people having access and relationship with the land, then the chances of it being misused, being poisoned, being broken in some way are greatly increased. It's only by having a relationship with a place that you can care about a place, and therefore protect it from, more abstract or outside kind of influences. Because if some big kind of corporation owns the land somewhere, they may never go to that place. It's just a number in a book. And they may do things to it or make decisions about it which have a devastating impact on the actual living place. And it's only people who are living and in relationship and using and being on and being around a place who can see what that means. And it's so important right now that I feel that we, all of us, form more of a relationship with places where we live. Even if you are in the city, form a relationship with those green spaces, because one day somebody might buy it and develop it, and if you're not using it and not there aware of it, that's how those things happen, right?
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's
What
the
you're doing, it's so important to fight for the right on the heath there to have those ponds,
mm,
and to, if anything, kick out the Corporation of London. I mean, I'm sure that would be nice if you could do it.
mm,
Take it properly into a kind of trust or ownership of the people who are using it or who have the vision to kind of keep it open long term for the people.
yeah.
That's what it should be. Fuck, and for that kind of money they're getting, they should be paying you to use it, right?
Oh, look, I could talk for hours on the City of London Corporation. It's fundamentally undemocratic. It's got a semblance of democracy, but I could just go for a long time on that.
There
But
are
it's a
plenty
tax
of
haven.
entities like that in the world, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. we're on the same page. A lot of people are, but yeah, it is very serious. Public access to nature spaces.
Yeah, and I wonder if, now that we are kind of moving into or very much in a new era now of this kind of online living that we're all doing, um, how that's going to change as well. I'm sort of optimistic in a strange way, because even though we are more kind of techie and plugged into that, there seems to be more exposure to the beauty of nature, even if you're seeing it as content.
Mm,
Inevitably it's having an effect on you, like, oh, where's that, or
mm,
wow, that looks amazing, or perhaps I can go and do what they're doing somewhere where I live.
mm,
So I'm wondering if there isn't a kind of, bizarrely, even though the technology is taking us away from here and now and the physical, if it is
mm.
also reminding us of what we already have and what's out there. And perhaps I hope, that perhaps in the way that I'm experiencing it, maybe there's an opportunity to have a very technical, connected, global perspective and have a very deep, profound relationship with the place where you live, because
Yeah.
they do seem to sit side by side.
Yeah. No, I'm like you. I'm doing a lot of stuff on Zoom, and yeah, I had a past reputation of being someone who is a bit of like a Luddite. Not anti-technology, but useless at it. I'm getting better. Um, but it's like any tool. It's got a lot of good things and a lot of bad things in how it's used, and I think it's terrific. It's democratized so much stuff. You've got an interesting podcast. Um, there's a whole lot of different things that come out of it, and maybe that this virtual reality thing. Uh, I get that too. It took me a wee while to kind of grasp that, but some of that virtual reality is very amazing. I went and saw The Lion King, the second one. I think it was the second one, and I remember seeing the first Lion King. It was animated, and I really loved it. I love animation, and I just didn't know. I thought it was going to be what I think is proper animation, and we got in there and you've got the lion coming up to you, and you couldn't tell the difference. Well, I couldn't. And Tree said to me, you know that this is animated? I said, no, this isn't animated. And we've been lucky enough to go there, to the Serengeti. Honestly lucky, and we've gone there. And I was like, holy heck. So, and that is a good thing, because, hopefully, people, none of us, if you are trapped looking down a 2-week quarantine in a hotel or whatever happens, that's pretty spectacular. I mean, I haven't done the virtual headset thing where, you can put it on apparently, and they'll take you up Everest. Apparently, if you do that, people are like, I'm freaking out, and Jesus, like, oh my God, and they've got a thing on their head. So look, it can be used for really all that good stuff too, huh? you know.
Yeah, I feel like the two, mixing the two, because I'm sort of starting a project now here on the land and realizing that a big part of it is going to be sharing it through social media, through YouTube or Instagram or whatever, but developing a relationship with people all over the place, but bringing them into a kind of intimate relationship with this place here and trying to share some of the kind of wonder and almost the miraculous things that happen on a day-to-day basis, or the beautiful things that I see, or really kind of using that amazing technology and connection to share the beauty and the wonder and the meaningfulness of the relationship I have, in the hope that others then might be able to kind of, or be inspired to find out for themselves where they live, go outside and have a
Mm,
look at where they are in a different way. And I think for that kind of thing, and for the connection, and for,
mm,
like we can meet now in this way, and it's very easy. And yeah, it's not the same as physical, and it's never going to be as good, but
mm,
it's a wonderful thing because
mm,
there's a felt sense as well as there just being a visual thing here. We're both in bodies, and you do
mm,
communicate in that physical way even though we're doing it online.
mm.
So it can be a powerful thing as well, because
Yeah,
people, these connections going on have increased the sort of opportunity for good things, as well as kind of creating a lot of bad stuff. But the opportunity for good connections is massively increased, and
yeah.
information gets around quick, and yeah, you can manipulate and play with it and game it and weaponize it, and we're seeing
Mm,
all of that being learned and played out now.
mm,
But you also can't stop it, and it's getting harder to kind of control the minds of a population. Or, well, I don't know, maybe you could debate that. There are new sort of games being played, aren't there? But the truth can get through in
mm.
that sense as well, and I think that that's kind of powerful and
Yeah,
optimistic.
100%. I mean, good journalism is always meant to hold power to account.
Yeah.
And if you only have three news channels, you know, and now you have a plurality of media, some good, some bad, some indifferent, whatever it is, it forces those who have certain positions to, explain themselves more. Um, but yeah, I mean, yeah, look, I think, what can you say? I mean, I was just thinking of what you said, and like we're on Zoom and we're both present with each other. And when I first came across Zoom was when this lockdown started, and a friend organized a whole friends meetup thing on Zoom and a party and that. And I thought, oh, it's pretty cool. I hated it.
Mhm.
I really didn't like it because I was looking at the screen and heaps of people were like, over there. Some people were on their phone, some people were, on this keyboard, whatever they were doing. And I was just like, oh, like, hang about. And I had to get off it because I sort of got into trouble. I said, oi, I'm talking to you, or, and again, someone said, oh, you need to, calm down, chill out, etc. I said, well, I don't know actually, because I'm into this. I'm present. I'm engaged with everyone, and 80% of our crew at one point were just elsewhere.
Mm.
So who knows? I mean, so yeah, look, it's all good. These are good mediums, and environmentally, you can make the argument that people aren't flying round the world to massive to do certain events and meetings, etc. I mean, that's having a lower impact. I mean, I know some guy who, he's how do we say this nicely? He's in finance and he flies everywhere to do stuff where he says, look, really, it's great decadence and it's wonderful, but I really don't need to be doing it.
Mhm.
Yes, but so there's one aspect to that.
Sure. Sure.
Yeah.
And and if some of that kind of connection or experience is coming from the online world, then maybe there is more of an opportunity also to go out and about in your own environment, in your own locality, and put more energy into that. I do feel like the two together makes for a rich experience if you can deepen your relationship with the place where you live and meet and connect with people from all over the place.
Yeah.
Those two perspectives, both global and local, have so much to offer, and there's so much kind of interplay between them as well.
Yeah.
That is exciting for me. I like that.
Instagram Live, Facebook Live. I mean, these are great examples of what we're talking about. I mean, your project, I don't know what it is, maybe, but that sounds really cool, right? Um, and, technology is going to allow you to do that, and share it, and, people engage with it. That didn't happen before.
Yeah, I think and it's much more likely that things will be supported and succeed because they've got that wider community behind them in
Mm,
some way. And just the increase in opportunity for, maybe the right person isn't where you live and you need them as part of your project, but maybe they hear about it because of what you're putting out there, and then they want to come over. So that's a powerful thing. It really is. Yeah.
mm. Yeah, yeah. No, I hear it. We're down on board. We're on board. Yeah. No, I think one more thing I came to mind was there was a New Zealand kind of dub hip hop band called Rhombus. They kind of had a really great album, I think, but they had a couple of really good tracks. This might have been, God, maybe 20 years ago, I think. And I think they were a 3 or 4 piece, and only one of them lived in New Zealand. And they were doing probably this kind of stuff before this happened. I think one was in Japan, someone was in America, someone else, and yeah, good result, right?
Yeah, yeah. Well,
Mm,
that's a great example, isn't it? Just using, in a way, using the limitations, and if your particular art form, like theirs was totally digital anyway, you can
mm,
do it, right? What, and that would never have happened in the way it did, without the technology. So there's going to be all kinds of things like that we can't even imagine yet. That cultural sort of eruptions that will happen, that will be this sort of global mix of things going on, these kind of weird collaborations and worlds and universes sort of meeting that perhaps wouldn't have before.
mm.
That's a rich seam to be mined, I guess, culturally.
Yeah,
Mm.
big time. Oosh, sorry, my back.
Well,
Okay.
maybe that's us. That's your back is saying, right, that'll do. I've been sitting far too long.
No, yeah, I wasn't saying that. I was just saying my back. I was in the lotus position. I just got out of it. Gets hard on the old joints. I'm not there yet, So I've got some proper yogi friends, and I think one of his trainings was a 6 hour in the lotus position.
Yeah, that's it. Well, I'm sort of a lapsed yoga person. I used to do quite a bit, and I haven't for years. And I'm not constantly like saying to myself, "You got to start again. You got to start again. Before you
Mm.
get too old, you got to start again." When you say something like that, I think there's no way I couldn't sit for like 10 minutes without feeling it. So yeah,
Yeah, I'll get back into it. I just came out of it like 2 minutes ago, but yeah, no, you're not too old. We're just beginning. We're just beginning. That's what I always say, these days. I'm just beginning. So, you know, I think that's important to hold on to. You're just beginning. And in a way, I think what we've been discussing is very positive, because I think on many levels we are just beginning. Some of us more than others on different levels, but we're evolving. Well, I had a conversation with a guy today who's very pessimistic. It's pretty dark. He says he was a realist, and he's really smart. And we kind of said, well, yeah, but 20 years ago this was happening, 30 years ago this was happening, and don't know if we were trying to win the argument, but I don't think we were trying to win the argument. We were just trying to point out things, because it's quite easy to go the other way. Yeah. And part of it was about Hampstead Heath. Yeah. But no.
Yeah, I feel like it's like we're in the kind of teenage crisis, humanity. I feel it's like we're just about the opportunity now is that we could actually become adults as a human culture for the first time, in a way, and really kind of take on that responsibility. I feel like that's the time we're in. We're in the time of the teenage crisis collectively. It's like if you looked at the whole of human history as one life journey, I feel like we are at the very apex of the teenage crisis, where the kind of crazy things we're doing may kill us, or we may just get through it and then go to the next stage in life, where it's less about ourselves and more about the good of the whole, and just that kind of maturing self-responsibility, not rebelling, not taking. There's a feeling of that, and it's a massively dangerous time and a massively optimistic time, because everything's wide open as the old ways and institutions are crumbling and kind of falling apart. There's so much space between now for new stuff to come through, and it's already happening in a lot of ways. So yeah, it's a good time.
Yeah,
Not a
like you
very
said.
challenging one.
That's exactly the word I was going to say. I was exactly going to say a lot of things are being challenged, more than they possibly ever have before, partly because of this kind of thing, the social media and the evolution. And it's exactly what I was going to say. Things are being challenged and discussed and fought for and resisted, and these kind of things. And I think, but we've always, apparently, I think there was a quote from thousands of years ago. I don't know who said it, but they were having a conversation like we're having, and they were saying, God, it's interesting times we're living in. And yes, but there is a but. I think they're becoming more interesting, and things are being challenged, and the whole millennial woke thing against traditional power structures, the inequality, environmentalism, racism, the sexism, all of these things, they're interesting, and I enjoy it. I enjoy it, and I look at this as being really positive. But, I love the title of your show, The Listening. We do have to listen to each other and respect each other and see a multiple layers of things and be real. It's okay to be wrong or done stupid things, etc. And I think this is coming to the fore more and more. I mean, the guy I was having this debate with was a lot older than me. And I'm a Generation X guy. He would be a baby boomer. And but I really like listening to what he had to say and has to say. And he is very challenging, but he will listen to me and I'll listen to him. And we don't always agree, but I think, you know, ultimately we're on similar level, you know. And I just wish that would happen more often, Tim.
Mm. Mm.
I really do. Because I'm like you, I do think there are a lot of dangerous things bubbling. And yeah. That's me, really. I feel like we could talk for hours otherwise.
No, well, yeah, we could, you know, and there's no reason why we can't do this again and
Mm,
pick it up, you know. But I
mm,
feel like, yeah, that was a good beginning,
mm.
and a real pleasure to go on a bit of a journey with you. And yeah, next time I visit London, I'm gonna have to come for a swim.
Oh, yes, 100%. Yeah, yeah, no, 100%. I was about to say that. Yeah. No,
Cool.
but yeah, thank you for having me, and um, you know, thank you for listening. And I hope I listened a lot to you as well, and it was sort of an equal thing. But yeah, thank you. I mean, it's just a great title, The Listening, because listening for me is loving, and it's actually quite difficult to
Mm,
do,
mm,
particularly a lot of us talkers
mm.
and that. So yeah, wonderful.
Great.
Mm.
All right. Well, thanks, man. Let's pick it up again. Take care.
Thank you.
See you soon.
Ciao, ciao.